District 7 PD&E Study in Deception. This is the cover of their preliminary engineering report. It's dated November 2015. This is basically what was presented to the public in December of 2015 at the FDOT District 7 open house. The SPUI does not satisfy the project purpose and need, given severe congestion at the signal on US 41 and overall level service F. And when I say overall level service F, I am saying it's still a level of service F, including the free flow on the bridge. Even if you were to factor that in, it's still level service F. They shouldn't do that. They should only show, they should show the maximum delay. What they should show the public is maximum delay at the signal, not average delay, because there is no average delay. And when they do average delay, then they're factoring in the free flow traffic on the bridge. That reduces the delay in a deceptive way. The PFI does satisfy the project purpose and need with the overall level service D and no congestion on either 41 or 54. So again, I'm being repetitive, but it is what it is. But this is the excerpt from their preliminary engineering report. The study is being conducted to evaluate alternative capacity and operational improvements to meet existing and projected traffic demand resulting from development in Pasco County. To meet projected traffic demand. SPUI does not do. Purpose and need of the project is to meet, not generate future traffic. Of course, they want it to generate future traffic to New Port Richey, Zephyr Hills. You know, turn that road into a freeway, and they might actually get some traffic. You know, it just means that people from 75 that would go to New Port Richey, that's like 25 miles away. It's over 20 miles away. So they think that New Port Richey's a future, you know, Miami Beach. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't know how that's good for the people that use 41. Let's see. The PFI should meet future traffic demand with a level service D, no failing movements for both 41 and 54. The SPUI generates future traffic demand on 54 while keeping 41 severely congested with an overall level service F. Almost every vehicle movement is oversaturated at the SPUI signal. My VSIM analysis indicates that by 2045, US 41 will be as congested as it was in 2019. The MPO board, consisting of municipal and county politicians, wants to convert 54 into a freeway for economic development since before the District 7 PD&E study began, with the tollway cost feasibility study by International Infrastructure Partners LLC proposing to privately fund a SR54 SR56 express tollway across Pasco County from US 19 to US 301. The tollway plan failed due to public opposition, and the study showed it wasn't economically viable with a break-even term of over 50 years. So their tollway, the visions of tollways dancing through their heads went away. This is an excerpt from an article, Elevated Tollway, Pasco County, Ford, Florida, from December 2013. Quote, over a year ago, however, the express tollway was actually hatched by Pasco County officials who presented it to the Pasco Economic Development Council, Inc., which current MPO board member Mariano is an ex officio board member of the Pasco Economic Development Council. There it received positive response from Pasco business leaders and the feasibility study was initiated, end quote. Well, Pasco business leaders. So, special interests, basically. You know, and not business owners, business leaders. There are a lot of business owners along the 54 corridor that do not want it turned into a freeway because it's going to have a negative impact on access to their businesses. It's going to screw up the local road system. So they end up being losers. But these Pasco business leaders, probably landowners like Wilton Simpson, stand to cash in on this road turned into a freeway. Funding sources for economic development projects can be private, local taxes, and federal funding. In the case of a tollway, private funds did not materialize, a local tax too unpopular, and federal funds for economic development unlikely. The MPO board is fixated on converting SR 54 into a freeway for their own enrichment, but their only attainable funding option is federal funds to mitigate congestion from organic growth. I mean, that's the only reasonable funding source for this future freeway that they want is federal funds for capacity projects. Okay, projects to mitigate congestion. So they have to lie. They have to commit fraud. They have to tell Federal Highways, hey, we're building this project to mitigate congestion. Give us the money. But what they're really doing is wanting to build a freeway. Thus, their need to fraudulently misrepresent the SPUI as meeting future traffic demand when it won't, and ignoring that the PFI does. The SPUI only serves SR 54 east-west through traffic while failing to eliminate congestion on US 41 at the traffic signal. The Machiavellian MPO Vision 5456 study. So that study was happening at the same time as the PD&E. I had no knowledge of the Vision 5456 study when I proposed the PFI to District 7. Didn't know it existed. All I knew is that there's an intersection that they're studying to fix the congestion, and I felt the PFI would be the best project, would be the best option to do that. Then I find out about this Vision 5456 study. So, and this Vision 5456 study looks at the whole 30-mile corridor from Zephyr Hills over to Newport Richey. So I believe the MPO contrived that study to fabricate public support for the SPUI by placing several individuals on the task force with vested interests in Pasco County economic development. Like one of the members of the task force is an employee for the Pasco Economic Development Council. Then the board intended to have the MPO staff and their consultants misrepresent the SPUI as falsely positive by omitting any discussion of congestion at the signal, which they did. They omitted. I mean, they showed the SPUI working better than the PFI, with less delay than the PFI, and didn't talk at all about how much congestion would be on 41. So they didn't foresee the PFI would be included, thus the need to misrepresent the PFI too as falsely negative. So they designed the PFI incorrectly. They analyzed it using synchro, which is wrong to do. I objected. I was ignored. Even with synchro, though, the PFI worked better than all the other alternatives. The only way that they could show that the SPUI was better than the PFI is to ignore the oversaturated movements and only show delay for 2 cycles of the signal. Even though there are like 15 cycles to the signal, they only showed the task force delay for 2 cycles, a fraction of the hour instead of the entire hour. Whereas what they show for the PFI is the whole hour. The same scheme District 7 later does for the PD&E feasibility study. So District 7 basically does a rerun of the Vision 5456 disinformation campaign. I objected via email to the MPO, CC District 7, so they're aware of everything. That was Kirk Bogan and Craig Fox, I think at that time, or Lilium Escalera, who was the PD&E project manager before Craig Fox, over the incorrect treatment of the SPUI and PFI alternatives in the lead up to the October 2017 task force workshop. But my objections were ignored by both agencies. For example, they omitted the topic of oversaturated conditions at the SPUI signal because, and this is what I was told by their consultant, the oversaturated conditions is too complicated for the task force to understand. So they just didn't talk about it at all. At the October 2017 workshop, during the Q&A session at the end, this is when the task force and the consultants and MPO staff, it's when that was for the task force to ask questions of the staff and consultants. So during that session, I attempted to ask the MPO presenters about oversaturated conditions at the SPUI signal, and the task force chairman literally jumped to his feet, dashed over, and yanked the microphone out of my hand. And then they went on with other business as if nothing had happened. I mean, I was stunned. I mean, this guy jumps up. So I was handed the microphone to speak. I stood up and I was going to ask my question about oversaturated conditions. Before I could, this guy with the task force, he's also the one working for the Pasco Economic Development Council. So you could say he's working for Commissioner Mariano, who's on the MPO board. He jumps up, runs over to me, literally, grabs the microphone out of my hand, runs back, sits down, and then they continue on. Now, I could have and should have, honestly, should have raised hell right then and there. By law, I have the right to ask questions in a public meeting format, that they have to allow me to speak. They can't censor me like that by Florida law. I should have done it, but I was still trying to be diplomatic and professional and cooperative, accommodating with these people. I did not know then what crappy, bad faith people they are. I didn't know I was dealing with, like villains from a HBO series on the mob. I didn't know I was dealing with that kind of person. So I just sat there stunned. In the days leading up to the task force vote on the alternatives, I sent 11 emails to the task force members and CC'd MPO and District 7 staff. As a courtesy, I copied the MPO and District 7 staff. My emails contain corrections to the MPO's disinformation. Like I included oversaturated conditions and said this is what they mean. This is the implication. This means there's going to be a lot more congestion than what you're being told. Unbeknownst to me, in emails sent to District 7 from Noriega, he's the traffic engineer who was also in the presentation to the task force, with the AECOM and Casper, the then director of the MPO. In these emails, they falsely accused me of lobbying the task force for the PFI. They omitted their own improper conduct that caused me to send my emails in the first place. Of course, being the mean girls they are, District 7 gave me no opportunity to respond, to defend myself. I didn't learn of these emails until years later with my public records request. But it was because of my emails correcting the disinformation from the MPO staff and their consultants that the vote of the task force was deemed to be invalidated. I mean, that's the gist of the email from Casper to District 7 is that the vote has been tainted by this guy lobbying for his PFI. Which is why then they would justify showing the SPUI as number 1 and the PFI as number 2. But all of that was done without any communication with me at all. I was not given, of course my emails were very detailed. I had nothing to hide. Like I said, I copied both the district and the MPO, got no responses from them. I didn't, the right thing would have been for Kirk Bogan to say, hey, look, this MPO task force thing, this Vision 5456 study is being conducted improperly. And we need to make sure that the PFI is being treated correctly and that the task force is getting accurate information. That should have been what he did, what he would have done, but he didn't. He just ignored it all. The task force voted the PFI as the preferred alternative, followed by the SPUI and CFI alternatives. Following this vote, District 7 initiated their feasibility study to ostensibly study the feasibility of the alternatives, including the PFI. Let's see, it's just prior to this time that the MPO reordered the alternatives as the SPUI Alternative 1, PFI Alternative 2, and CFI Alternative 3. District 7 accepted this order for their feasibility study, ignoring my objections. So when I saw that the SPUI was being shown as Alternative 1, I objected. It's like the PFI was voted number 1. I was ignored. Then at some point during the initial stage of District 7 feasibility study, the board conveniently canceled the Vision 5456 study and dissolved the task force to allow the PD&E to proceed as they wanted and negating my ability to have any influence. And District 7 had no problem with this. Okay, so the task force votes the PFI as their preferred. That's not what the MPO board wants to see. District 7 was supposed to have 20 public meetings, including a workshop for the task force where they present their alternatives. But to eliminate my ability to have any influence or to communicate with the task force, the MPO board cancels the Vision 5456 study and dissolves the task force, and then the District 7 holds one public meeting and picks a SPUI. I mean, that's what has happened. That's why I say the Vision 5456 study was a Machiavellian ploy by the MPO board from the very beginning to manipulate the task force into selecting the SPUI so that they could say, that these politicians could then say, hey, the SPUI is not our idea, it's your own neighbors who wanted it. Don't blame us. The task force has spoken, and there's no dirt on our hands. Don't come at us. So, but it didn't play out that way. My guess is that this is a ploy that is done regularly by politicians. They create these citizen committees, commissions, task forces to make a decision on their pet projects, and if that decision agrees with them, then they're going to say, hey, look, this is really great, these people agree with me and think that this project's justified. But if they don't get the answer they want, well, they just cancel it, and you never hear about them again. So I submitted my PFI concept proposal for value engineering to District 7 in February 2016, and I was completely unaware of this Vision 5456 study. Planning level study to consider the future of the 30-mile 5456 corridor from Newport Richey to Zephyr Hills. By April 2016, it became alarmingly clear to me, with District 7 consent, that the MPO intended to pause the PD&E for this Vision 5456 study to consider other intersection alternatives. Okay, so they were going to put the PD&E on hold, and that was a disaster for me. I tried to get an explanation from the MPO as to why this was necessary. What is the justification? Because I knew what the implications would be. It would send the PD&E into a black hole. Okay, they offered me no explanation. I was just ignored. I proposed to both District 7 and the MPO that the PD&E should not be delayed, and that the Vision 5456 study take whatever final build alternative is selected as a future existing condition. And I was ignored. You know, because the intersection has an immediate need. It's been failing for years. People want this intersection fixed. This corridor is going to take decades. If it's going to be a future freeway, decades to build, if ever, because that's a very expensive proposition. Okay, a lot of money. I mean, we're talking billions of dollars to convert that road into a freeway. They could fix the intersection today, and whatever they do to fix it, they should just incorporate as a future existing condition and not hold that intersection and everybody who uses it hostage while they screw around with this pie in the sky and really what turns out to be Machiavellian effort to fabricate public support for something they know people really don't want. The PD&E pause was completely unjustified and improper. It resulted in the PD&E study requiring a restart later, with all new traffic costing years of unnecessary delay and hundreds of thousands more in consultant fees were just wasted. So they did the traffic for this PD&E and Vision 5456 combined. There are 3 iterations of traffic. So 3 times the traffic's been done, the design your traffic. The original initial traffic, then they redid the traffic for Vision 5456, the MPO did it, and then FDOT does it again when they restart the PD&E, like 2 years later, after Vision 5456. They don't care. They don't care. And then they reduce the traffic by 30% unjustified, whatever. Favors the SPUI, of course. The PD&E pause was unjustified because the bridge options had already been evaluated in the 4-year-old PD&E. So the PD&E was already 4 years old by this time. They had their 2 bridge options that they took to the public. So there was no reason to consider any other bridge options at that location at all, because they'd already determined what the bridge options should be. And they're both basically the same. It's just that one bridge is shorter than the other. Their alternative 3C would elevate the road for long distance. The alternative 3A, which is a SPUI they end up with, just goes over 41 in the railroad track. So what else? There's really nothing else to consider with respect to bridges, though in the Vision 54-56 study they're looking at elevating 54, 30 miles of elevated road. Okay, no questions, no concerns over whether that's even cost feasible to do. They've already had a tollway study say that it's not cost feasible to do such a thing. So, and the only at-grade alternatives that can possibly work at that location without being a total traffic jam for everyone, for both 54 and 41, is the PFI and CFI. And that's what they needed to amend the PD&E with, those 2 options. That's all they needed to do. That's all FDOT needed to do, is add the PFI and CFI to the PD&E and finish the study. So, and I say it's improper because the Vision 54-56 study is planning level. It's playtime. It's not engineering. It's planners with magic markers, and you know, it's not, well, it's just not credible, put it that way. It's all make believe. Okay, until it achieves the level of engineering analysis, which is what the PD&E does. It's just fantasy. Okay, it's dreaming. It's not real. So they're putting a pause on the PD&E study, which is real, in order to have this playtime with planners that then put my fee in jeopardy. Now they don't give a damn about me and my fee, obviously, but they also don't give a damn about the public interest or the taxpayers. So who are they serving by having this Vision 54-56 study? Well, again, it's just a Machiavellian ploy to contrive support for something they already know the people don't want. So the planning level evaluation that they would perform is much less accurate than a preliminary engineering level. And that's why I say it's a violation of NEPA. For them to outsource, this is District 7 outsourcing the screening of alternatives to a planning agency in the middle of a PD&E. So I voiced my concern to Gwen and the MPO, and I was ignored. District 7 should have just amended the PD&E with the PFI and CFI alternatives and finished the PD&E using their already established 2040 design year traffic. That's all they had to do. And that would have been the proper thing to do. There's almost 19,000 vehicles per hour at this location with heavy turning movements. That was the original traffic. The only at-grade designs that can possibly work with that much traffic is the PFI and CFI. Super Street's not going to do it. Roundabout's not going to do it. You know, U-turns, triple left turns at the existing, in a traditional intersection configuration. Nope. All of those are level service F, way worse than the SPUI. But there was no intelligence behind this whatsoever. But even more so, there was no. They didn't care that there is no intelligence behind any of this. What is that? Gross negligence on their part? I don't know. Now I believe the Vision 5456 diversion was a ploy by the MPO board with Gwen's consent to contrive support for bridge alternative. They would have the task force, which would be a captive audience for the MPO staff and their consultant to sell the bridge to these people, and I'm not criticizing the task force. Several members of the task force that I came to know were just honestly concerned citizens, and they didn't want the bridge, but they were in the minority. But they were hoping that there would be an alternative to the bridge. But I really believe that it was the job of Ali Atefi. He was the main MPO person. He was managing this study for the MPO, and their consultant, Tyndale Oliver. It was their job, I'm guessing, their marching orders from the MPO board to sell the bridge to the task force and get them to say that the bridge is what they want, so that the politicians could go back to the public and say, hey, this is what they wanted, so what can we do? Didn't turn out that way, so they canceled the study, dissolved the task force, but ended up picking the SPUI anyway. Task force voted that their top three alternatives would be the PFI, SPUI, and CFI with bridge in that order. District 7 was then to evaluate the feasibility of those three alternatives, which really meant the PFI and CFI, since they'd already studied the SPUI. Then report back to the task force with a workshop. So what I'm saying is that 2-year delay, and what put me through hell, as I had to sit there and watch this unfold, nothing I could do. They got to the same point, only worse, than what I was telling them all along. Just add the PFI and CFI and compare those two alternatives to the SPUI and finish the PD&E. 2 years and how much money was spent to get to the same point I was telling them that they were going to end up, and they just ignored me completely. Except that they have the CFI with the bridge, which they should never have done. And that was just incompetence of the MPO staff and Tyndale Oliver, because they don't know anything about the CFI, because they don't know what they're doing. They're planners. They're not engineers. They're not roadway or traffic engineers themselves. So they have so that whole circus, the Vision 5456 study, was the blind leading the blind. But they still ended up where I said they were going to end up. But I needed the CFI without a bridge to be comparable to the PFI. That's what Federal Highways wanted to see. But after the task force selected the PFI as the preferred alternative, the MPO canceled the Vision 5456 study and dissolved the task force. The whole thing was a scam. It was all a scam. So I say here, creating a bogus citizen participation committee is a useful political ploy used by corrupt politicians. When the politicians want to do something unpopular, they commission a citizen task force to make recommendations, then stack the task force with their buddies. Task force is supposed to vote in support of the unpopular initiative so the politicians can say the people have spoken. The ploy didn't work for the Vision 5456 study because there were several task force members who were hoping for an act-rate alternative to bridges. When the task force narrowly voted the PFI as their preferred alternative, so the MPO board canceled the study and dissolved the task force. There you go. They wanted to make sure that the task force wasn't going to be there, that FDOT would then present the alternatives to them, and then I would send emails to the task force saying, they're doing this, they're doing that, don't fall for it. Well, they wanted to make sure that didn't happen again. This is a graphic from the task force workshop that the MPO prepared, or their consultant, Tyndall Oliver. And it shows they had 12 alternatives. And I think the first 6 are bridges. And the 7 through 12 are, I believe they're, well, 10 is with a bridge. 10 is what they end up. 10 is with a intersection like the CFI combined with a bridge. Why you would do that, I have no idea, but that's, they included that. So what I want to point out here, though, is this is what they showed the task force. Alternative 1 is the SPUI alternative. And they show it with this 62 seconds of delay, 44 seconds of delay. I think that's 44 seconds of delay with the bridge traffic included, and 62 seconds of delay just at the signal. Well, that's ridiculous. That's just absolutely ridiculous. That's what they got from Synchro, but Synchro lies. So, I mean, Synchro it doesn't lie, but Synchro says that under oversaturated conditions, it's not giving a correct result. It's only giving delay for a couple cycles of the signal. So I complain about this to Tyndall Oliver and Atefi, and I say, what you're showing the task force is wrong. So their response to that is, well, we'll just tell the task force that it only is delay for 2 cycles of the signal. Well, what does that mean? I've never heard that ever done. That's so not standard. You know, it's always delay over the hour. The AM hour, the PM hour, not 2 cycles of the signal. That's meaningless and misleading. But that's what they show in their table here. And then the PFI, which is number 8, is 56 seconds. That is wrong in and of itself, but that's what Synchro generated. VSIM would say it's 42, 47 seconds. But what they showed the task force is that the SPUI has less delay than the PFI. It's a complete lie. An average peak vehicle delay chart left, this one, was presented to the task force and the public. It was a public meeting on in October 2017, MPO Vision 5456 workshop. It's completely wrong. The delay figures were generated from Synchro using its auto timing feature. But except for the PFI, almost all vehicle movements at all the other alternatives, including the CFI, were severely oversaturated. I think 6 of 12 movements at the CFI are oversaturated with Synchro. They had one movement at the PFI in the afternoon that was oversaturated, and it shouldn't have even had that. They didn't balance the delay. So, but all the other alternatives, including all the bridge alternatives, were severely oversaturated. Synchro only reports delay for the first 2 signal cycles for oversaturated conditions, meaning the delay is grossly underreported. It's supposed to be for the hour. The MPO staff and consultants' response to my complaint was to tell the task force the delay is only for the first 2 or 3 cycles. The standard practice is to report delay for an hour, over the hour, the peak hour. All alternatives with oversaturated conditions should have max vehicle delay shown by approach. That would be the correct thing to do. The honest thing to do is to disclose to the task force, disclose to the public what the maximum delay is by approach when you have oversaturated movements. What they completely omit from their presentation is that the PFI only had 1 oversaturated movement in the PM, none in the AM. And if they'd done the signal timing correctly, the PFI would have had no oversaturated movements because they didn't balance the delay. So think about that. You know, they're showing delay at the SPUI for 2 cycles of the signal. They're showing delay at the PFI for over the entire hour. And of course the PFI is better. But they don't explain that to the task force. All that is omitted, and all they'd show is 44 seconds for the SPUI, 56 seconds for the PFI, as if it's apples and apples. When what it really is rotten eggs and apples. Okay, but the task force doesn't know any better. Again, I'm not blaming them. And my ability to correct this, they shut me down, which is why I had to send emails. So this omission was done knowingly and intentionally. At the meeting, when I tried to ask presenters about their omitting oversaturated conditions, the task force chairman got up, literally dashed over to me, and yanked the microphone out of my hand. This is another exhibit that was shown. Pedestrian crossing summary. Okay, so it's been an ongoing theme that the PFI is no safer, actually less safe for pedestrians than the SPUI. Complete BS, absolute BS, but that's what they want the public to believe. That's what they wanted the task force to believe. So they showed this table, and this was Domingo Noriega, the AECOM traffic guy. He presented this piece to the task force on pedestrian safety, and they chose to compare the bridge, you know, like the SPUI option and the PFI. All right, so they're targeting the PFI with this, and the table of values is in black. My corrections are in red. So what they showed to the task force is in black here, and what they show is total lanes crossed, maximum lanes crossed at one time, distance crossed, and pedestrian refuge islands. They selected these carefully. There are many more factors that could be included, should be included when discussing pedestrian safety that they omitted. But they chose these 4. So total lanes crossed All three of their numbers are wrong. So of these values, there's 3, 6, 9, 12 values in this table. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 of them are wrong. 8 of the 12 values are wrong. Total lanes crossed. So you just count the lanes, and at their SPUI had 17 lanes to cross and the PFI had 16 at that time. They didn't allow the PFI to have auxiliary through lanes, just like District 7 didn't allow the PFI to have auxiliary through lanes. That's one of my complaints. That's one of their methods of discrediting the PFI is just not giving it enough lanes to work. So, but given the design that they were using, the PFI, so just to make it perfectly clear, I had nothing to do with their PFI design at all. I was completely excluded from the MPO's design of the PFI, and they used Synchro for that. And they had, I think they did have a CAD drawing. I was totally excluded, didn't get any questions from them, nothing, no technical guidance, nothing. As if they know anything about the PFI. As if I don't know anything about the PFI. District 7 did the same thing. Okay, so anyway, they get the total lanes crossed wrong, but they're equal, they're still equivalent. Maximum lanes crossed at a single time. 5 lanes for the SPUI. No, it's 11. At their SPUI was 11. FDOT's SPUI is 9. 11 versus 3 lanes for the PFI at that time. This is a big deal that they completely glossed over. Well, it's just 5 versus 3. No, it's 11 versus 3. Distance crossed. They show the PFI 300 feet and the SPUI 295 feet. No. I measured the SPUI was 500. Their SPUI is 540 feet, and the PFI was 380 feet. Pedestrian refuge islands 5 and 5. And islands, that's a good thing. I say here, properly maintained refuge islands are a good thing. But I point to this column, maximum lanes crossed at one time. Of all of these, this is by far the most important, and they showed 5 versus 3 when it should be 11 versus 3. From this, then the MPO and Tyndale Oliver conclude that the PFI is no safer for pedestrians than the SPUI. So this was presented by Noriega, who has a personal grudge against me. I was not given this in advance. I had no idea. This was sprung on me. I didn't know this was happening until I was sitting in the meeting. So I didn't get this in advance. So it was a total ambush. The purpose was to give a comparison of relative pedestrian safety between the 2 selected bridge alternatives and the PFI. You know, not the CFI, not any of the other bridge alternatives, none of the other alternatives, just basically SPUI, PFI, and PFI is not any safer. That's what the whole purpose of this is. My markups are in red. Noriega presented this table with its many errors, which the MPO then used to conclude the PFI is no safer for pedestrians than the bridge alternatives. Noriega committed fraud and in the process defamed me. I sent this out. I may have even copied Noriega. I don't remember now. But I sent this to the task force members with my corrections and as an email, and copied Tefi and at the MPO and Bogan and probably Fox, or no, this was probably Escalera, but the project manager at District 7 of the PD&E. None of them responded to this at all. No response. So lying like this is perfectly okay as far as Bogan is concerned. As far as District 7 is concerned, them committing fraud like this is fine. I didn't get any apologies. I didn't get any retractions. I didn't get any corrections. I got nothing from anyone involved. I objected to the MPO and was ignored. This matter of pedestrian safety was regularly brought up over the 6+ years of the MPO and FDOT studies to suggest the PFI wouldn't be safe for pedestrians. So even though all the numbers favor the PFI, somehow magically the PFI is not safe for pedestrians. But the correct numbers show the PFI should be objectively far safer for pedestrians than the bridge alternatives. Neither agency ever presented this issue honestly. This is a graphic that I had prepared, well, actually 7 times. I had 7 times, and that I sent this to the MPO and District 7. There are a number of iterations of this. Every time they changed the traffic, I had to update this graphic because the PFI changed. The designs changed. But the story stays the same. What this graphic shows is a by the numbers comparison of relative safety between the PFI existing intersection and the SPUI. And I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 factors that I include in this table. So included in this table is maximum lanes to cross in a single phase, maximum number of crossings to cross the road, maximum number of lanes to cross road, which may be done in multiple stages, right turn on red, free right turn, that would be the presence of right turn on red, the presence of a free right turn, maximum pavement width in a single crossing, that would be measured from curb face to curb face. Because when considering pedestrian safety, when is the pedestrian in harm's way? Well, the moment the pedestrian steps off the curb to the instant the pedestrian leaves the roadway, is basically steps up onto the opposite curb, the pedestrian is in harm's way. The pedestrian is on the pavement and is in a location where they could be hit by a vehicle. Of course, a pedestrian standing behind the curb could be hit by a vehicle, but that's a vehicle that has left the roadway. But just, between curb and curb, that's where I consider the pedestrian to be at greatest risk. So measuring that distance. Then how many directions does traffic approach the pedestrian in a single crossing? So this would be vehicle pedestrian conflict points, is what that means. Small or no pedestrian refuge islands. So is there presence of refuge islands increase pedestrian safety versus no refuge island available? And then the pedestrian speed needed to cross given available time. Given the length of the phase available. So I tried to objectively then compare the PFI to the no build and the then F.Alt3A, which is a SPUI alternative. A by the numbers objective comparison. And the PFI is without question the safer environment for pedestrians. Without question. But this was ignored by everybody. And then, during the Vision 5456 workshop, they come out with their own version of this. So I've never seen anybody do something like this on PD&E or at preliminary development. This is like above and beyond. And the reason I did this is because it was brought up as a question in my initial presentation to Bogan, Noriega, and Langlis, and Tefi, was what about pedestrian safety? Okay, so I responded with this table. Well, it didn't mean anything because they didn't care. They really didn't care. Table left is one iteration of 7 that I had supplied to both District 7 and the MPO at various times, with the first one on 29 February 2016, 3 days after I gave my initial presentation to Bogan. I generated this graphic, this exhibit, and distributed by email. When factoring all important pedestrian safety considerations, there's no question the PFI is the safest. But for the entire duration of the MPO Vision 5456 and District 7 feasibility studies, they continually implied, either by innuendo or false information, that the PFI would be unsafe for pedestrians. It was continuous. But it was either an uninformed opinion or backed by false numbers. What both the MPO and District 7 repeatedly did was to omit the fact that the SPUI means pedestrians have to cross 9 lanes. That's the current iteration of the SPUI. To get across 41, pedestrians have to cross 9 lanes. This version, you can see this crossing, 41. Somehow that's safer than this crossing or any of these crossings at the PFI. So here, pedestrian, to get across 41, it's a it's a multi-stage crossing. Pedestrian has to cross. Here, the pedestrian has to cross 4. There's 4 crossings for the pedestrian to make. Actually, from here, pedestrian has to go, if they want to go from here to here, pedestrian has to go 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. There's 6 crossings. Now, that's not 6 stages, because when traffic is on 41 through movement, the pedestrian is able to cross over to this corner, and then when 54 goes through, the pedestrian is able to cross, if they can make it, all the way to here. So it may only be a 2-stage crossing, or they get to here and have to stop, and then they go here in the next phase. The point being is that to get from here to there, the most number of lanes that the pedestrian has to cross at this time with this version of the PFI is 3 lanes. Now with auxiliary through lanes, then it would be 4 lanes. Versus this, where the pedestrian has to cross 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I said 11. Is that 11? 1, 2, 3. Oh, this is 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Yeah, this is 11 lanes. So pedestrians got to cross 11 lanes in one go, with traffic coming from 1, 2, 3, 4 directions. And if there's a U-turn, 5 directions. I said 3. That should be 5. But only 1 at the PFI. So there's no question that the PFI is safer for pedestrians if you just look at the numbers. If you're objective about it. None of this was acknowledged by either agency even once. There was never any conversation with either agency. I didn't get any feedback from either agency. I didn't get any acknowledgement of this at all. 7 times I submitted it to them. 7 times I was ignored. This is the MPO's version of the PFI. Again, I had nothing to do with this. It's wrong. They designed it incorrectly. They put it on top of this is a power substation here, which needs to be avoided. They put the PFI on top of it. They cut off access to the local roads. They have this ridiculously huge bypass junction. This is garbage. This is garbage, and all of this is garbage. And I had to endure this. I had to suffer through this as they violated my PFI. You know, it's like a bunch of just like graffiti, or you know, it's like somebody going up to, you know, a piece of artwork and then just spray painting over it. You know, they're like vandals. It's like vandalism. They vandalized the PFI. Or violated. It felt more like a violation to me. So here I say I'd already designed the PFI in CAD. All they had to do is drop my design into this graphic. That's all they had to do, is use my design instead of doing this abomination. Just take my design and use my design as their graphic. No, can't do that. I would have done it for free. I mean, my design was based on FDOT's first iteration traffic. They updated the traffic, which meant that my PFI had to be redone. Actually, I did redo it. I redid the PFI based on their traffic. They could have just taken my work, dropped it in there. No, they had to do this, which is complete and utter crap. But I know they wanted to show the PFI hitting that substation. And when I complained about that, I was told, oh, this is planning level. Doesn't matter. Nobody's really paying that much attention to impacts. You know, and I'm like, the PFI could be eliminated at this point. Okay? And you're showing it impacting the substation. Alright. Well, it does come up later. Goldstein, the attorney for the MPO, who was in attendance at the task force meeting, he raises the question, well, it looks like the SPUI is impacting that substation. Man, I'm just like, what the hell? Then the response to that was, well, this is planning level. It's not going to actually impact it. And it may miss it. They designed their PFI such that it would impact the power substation in the northeast quadrant, as well as Tibbetts lumber. So it's on top of this lumber yard here too, which it shouldn't be. I objected and was told it was just planning level analysis, so the impacts weren't important. At the workshop, Goldstein, with the MPO, raised the question of the PFI impacting the substation, and I was given no opportunity to respond to this. That's why I wonder if it was all rehearsed, it was all in the script. Because they're trying to discredit the PFI, but they're trying to do it in a very sneaky way. The MPO's PFI bypass roads are wrong based on their incorrect synchro analysis. The bypass roads are too long, causing them to extend beyond Leonard Road and Carson Drive. FDOT did the same thing. Yeah, FDOT does the same thing. Again, I objected. I was ignored. So they have a table that they provide where they compare the alternatives. They have various criteria, evaluation criteria. These are selection factors. Okay, and they don't provide any explanation. There's no documentation that explains any of this that you see. Now, theirs is blue, mine is green. I went through and did my own evaluation, and I provided that in a supplement that they did send to the task force members. So I created a supplement that was, well, I think they did. They were supposed to have. The supplement was supposed to, they said they would distribute it to the task force. Whether they did or not, I guess I can't say. But I do my own assessment, my own ratings. And of course, you know, the criticism is going to be, well, of course I'm going to favor the PFI because I'm going to get millions of dollars. Obviously, I'm not, you know, I can't be trusted with my ratings. Well, all of my ratings I back up and I explain in the supplement. But this alternative one, that's their SPUI, that ends up being the FDOT SPUI in the feasibility analysis. Or it may be their number 4, number 1, a lot of their bridge alternatives are basically the same with different arrangement of bus accommodation. So I go through and I come up with my own ratings based on what I think makes the most sense, what I think is correct. So for instance, they have this rating here, consistency with planned north-south transit. They show the best is a full circle and the worst is an open circle. So they show the SPUI being best for planned north-south transit. And it's like the signal is going to be a parking lot on 41. How can you call that best? I say it's worst. You know, if you're delaying buses by 20 minutes on 41 to get through the signal, that's not transit friendly. I say that the PFI is best. You know, you could argue, well, maybe it's not very good. Maybe it should be just high. You know, maybe not a full circle, maybe a 3/4. They make it a half circle. Well, but the PFI doesn't get congested, so buses ought to be able to get through easily. You could argue, well, the PFI doesn't accommodate a bus stop very well, although I think that it can. But that was never a question. There was no discussion. They never showed any interest or curiosity as to how a PFI can be designed to accommodate buses. Didn't come up. Minimizing environmental impacts. Well, they got that right. SPUI doesn't do that at all. But PFI, I think, is better than just medium. The PFI is you know, the no build obviously is the best. but the PFI is very high in terms of minimizing impacts. Or high, I have it as high. Pedestrian and bicycle safety. There's no question the PFI is safe for pedestrians. I think it's safe for bicycles too. And the SPUI is not. Potential risks. Well, they show that the SPUI is high in that regard. In other words, low in terms of potential risks. I say it's bad because of the congestion at the signal. That's a big risk. A risk that they ignore. You know, if a problem is not a problem, right? If you just pretend it doesn't exist. Intersection level service. They have the SPUI. Intersection level service is very high, even though it's a severe F. Estimated business relocations. Well, they do have that at bad, but they also had the PFI as bad. Now I messed this up. I made a mistake. It should be the reverse. The PFI relative to the SPUI should be high. In other words, should be few business relocations, because the PFI involves half as many relocations as the SPUI. You could say, okay, maybe the fair is to say that it's medium. It should be half filled, not 3/4. Fine. But it's not the same as the SPUI. In terms of business relocations, the PFI is much better than the SPUI. And then cost, well, I left that one go. And then I added these two columns. One is how well does the alternative satisfy the minimum level of service policy of D? The PFI does and the SPUI does not. Objectively true. And then I give what's the overall rating. So if you add all these up and assuming that they're equal weight, then the PFI is much better than the SPUI. So the above table is from the MPO Task Force Workshop presentation with my corrected ratings in green. The MPO ratings are in blue. Presumably the MPO did provide this supplement to the task force. My ratings are objectively far more correct because they take into account the congestion at the bridge signal and its secondary impacts on other criteria. Under pedestrian and bicycle safety, the MPO rated the PFI low with no explanation. Of course, you saw their table that showed the PFI not being any better than the SPUI. The PFI is objectively the safest environment for pedestrians and cyclists. And this issue was an important concern because it kept being brought up. And the implication is, well, the PFI is not safe. But always by innuendo. Under consistency with planned north-south transit, meaning 41, the bridge signal will be severely congested, and it won't be consistent with any planned transit. Now, how could it be? How could that be consistent with their transit plan if the road is congested and the buses can't actually get where they need to go in a timely manner? I added the column for the target level service D policy, which the PFI satisfies and no other alternative does. Yeah, none of the other alternatives satisfies that policy, not even the CFI, based on the synchro results. And once all the adjusted ratings are totaled, the overall rating for the PFI is high, and the MPO's favorite Alt 1 is low. I added the overall rating column because it shows in one place how much better the PFI is to the other alternatives. So is this me lobbying for the PFI? Am I lobbying for the PFI? I mean, that's what I'm accused of. Or am I just telling the truth? I mean, just these are the facts.